Tune in to Kaleidoscope Eyes with your host, trans man LeKross Ortiz. Every week, we will be touching topics within the LGBTQIA plus community. We will also be having interviews with individuals within the community and allies. Journey with us as we share in their struggles and triumphs every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern.
WLFE-DB Radio has LGBTQ shows like Across the Pond, Rainbow Soul, Everything Yet Nothing, and Inside the Drag Closet. Check out the schedule on WLFE-DB.com. You can even watch them on TV at WLFE-DB.com under LGBTQ Friends, right off our website. Again, it's WLFE-DB.com for your LGBTQ shows and more.
WLFE-DB.com, where talk radio is a whole lot better. Our shows are your shows, and that there makes for a great talk radio.
Welcome to Rainbow Soul, part of the WLFE-DB network, an explorative discussion about spirituality beyond mainstream religions. Hollis Taylor, author, psychic, astrologer, and alchemical mage, brings their non-binary perspective together with fellow drag king and trans man LeKross Ortiz, a Jewish Taino with spiritual background of exploration that has led him to an atheist perspective. Join these guys as they explore deep and difficult topics, all related to spirituality, offering a queer perspective and exploration of interesting topics and engaging guests to help explore conversations for the Rainbow Soul.
Welcome everyone. It's Hollis, and I'm here with Rainbow Soul on the 4th of July. Happy holiday if you celebrate it. And I hope you're having a great night. And I'm super excited about tonight's show. LeKross is not here at this time. He might jump in a little bit later. I'm not sure. And he's actually at a wedding or something. So something got caught up there. Anyway, I do have some special guests today. And the first thing I want to say is that I'm Hollis Taylor. I prefer they, them pronouns. And I am an author of a book called Divine Androgyne. It's a book to help you unwind the binary so that you can be your most authentic self and walk your sacred path. And it's about unwinding things like trauma and even the trauma of being non-binary in a binary world. So that's what it's all about. And I love to explore topics here on Rainbow Soul. So I would love to have you ask questions tonight. And tonight we are talking about sacred sexuality. Sacred sexuality. So I hope that you're ready for this topic. And, it could be a lot of fun. We're going to create our own fireworks tonight. Welcome, Eve. It's so great to see you. I'm glad you're here. Glad you made it tonight. So glad you're here. And the thing is that sacred sexuality is so important to all of us. There's a thing in the world that there's like this vibration in the world that implies that sexuality is something to be ashamed of. When in reality, it's actually no different than your needs for eating or to take a bath or go for a walk. You need these things. So it is part of being human. So, and I know that there are asexual people out there, and I don't want to forget you. And I want to say that even for asexual people, they do need some sort of intimacy usually. It's just not sexual based. That's all. But tonight we're going to talk about sex. And I love to talk about sex. So I'm going to bring one guest out at a time. And the first guest I'm going to bring out is Candace. Candace is very special because she runs a special show, and I'll let her tell you more about herself here in just a moment. Welcome, Candace. Hopefully, if her camera's working. Was working. Okay, well, we'll give Candace a minute to get her camera working. It was working a second ago. And we'll move on to, looks like she lost her connection for a minute. So hopefully she'll be back. So we're going to move on to Kris. Kris Lovestone is a great friend of mine that I know from Magic Fire Circles. And so I know that he is a very magical person. And he also is the author of The Conscious Cock. Or Conscious Cock. So let me bring him out then. Kris.
Well,
Welcome.
I love that introduction. Christopher is a magical person. I've never had anybody introduce me like that. I'm happy to be here, Hollis. Happy to be on the show with you. And, sacred sexuality is something that I normally shy away from talking about because it's not sacred for everybody. A lot of people are atheists and, they want to separate sex from talk about spirituality and divinity. So normally I don't go here. But for you, I'm happy to go here tonight,
I'm so glad because I know it's not sacred for everyone, but for a lot of us it is. And the people that watch my show, trust me, they're all about anything that helps bring out spirituality. And so our next guest is Christine. And Christine is an excellent advisor. I know that she's a great coach and that she also has a book. And I want to bring her out so she can tell us about her. Come on out, Christine.
Hello, hello. I've been out for a while, so I don't know if I need to come out, but I'm here tonight. Thank you so much for having me. And coach, therapist, author, and I do talk about sacred sex probably more than the people around me want me to, but I think that everything that we exchange is powerful, whether we acknowledge it or not, and what we call it in the language that we use. We sometimes have the same language, we sometimes don't. So thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this tonight.
Great. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for coming. And now looks like Candace is back, and I want to welcome out Candace, the queen of the Temple of Frolic. Candace.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Tell us about who you are.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am Candace. And I am, the queen of the Temple of Frolic. It is, for me, I was thinking about this earlier. I feel like this whole path and this conversation that we're about to dive into together, it really chose me versus something I made a conscious choice about. Having a sacred relationship to sexuality. And for me, professionally assisting others in creating that for themselves and creating fun events as well as experiences for individuals, couples, groups, so that we can rediscover the sacred essence of this energy inside of us beyond the physicality. Yeah. I'm happy to be here. Yes.
Well, that's so beautiful. That's beautiful. I love exactly what you said there, Candace. And I want to start with, first of all, sexuality is under a cover of shame. There's a lot of people, it doesn't seem to matter either, like what culture you're in. I mean, not every culture, but a lot of cultures in the world have this level of, when it comes to sex, just like Christine said, sometimes we make people uncomfortable just by talking about it. And it's like, gosh, we're not even doing anything yet. So let's address the shame. Like for me, sexuality is as important as my dinner. How healthy is my dinner? How healthy is my exercise routine or anything else that I do in life? Is my sexuality healthy as well? And how do you see sex? And to me, I think that when it's sacred, it's even better for me, because then it's also for my heart. When it has a little bit of tantric or even sometimes a little bit of kink or anything like that, if you add that kind of extra meat to it, it seems to be more fulfilling for my soul. So how does it feel for you guys? How do you view it, and how does it experience in your world?
I grew up on a farm. So I grew up watching the horses fuck. I grew up watching the sheep fuck. I grew up watching everything fuck. I knew where the penis went at an early age. Okay. That was my sex ed. It was really good sex ed. That goes in there, and then X number of months later, you got babies. So, I grew up with a real kind of basis in it being about reproduction. Right. But now as an adult and having a long-term juicy relationship that I've really dived into with my whole heart, lots of investment of time and energy over the years, layers have come off of that. And as I've gotten a finer and finer understanding of what's possible between two hearts and two minds when you bring the body and your juices, together in a safe space. So I just want to add some humor in there to begin with.
Go ahead, Christine or Candace, go for it.
Sure. Although Candace, you look like you want to go, so go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I feel like there's something that I wanted to share in this, and I'm glad to have the humor come before this. So in my childhood in history, there was a lot of abuse and misuse around sexuality. And I think, like, when I think about it, this societal shame around our most innate primal desires, whatever those may be, is what created that experience. Like those people that may have harmed me in one form or another, they did. I feel like it, if they had a safe, sacred space, it wouldn't have happened. I feel like this shame, it creates that disharmony, and it creates in the field for all of us. Yeah.
Totally resonate with that, Candace. Totally resonate with that. Yes.
Yeah.
Go for it, Christine.
Well, so shame has kind of been thrown around here. And I think, a lot of my purpose and one of those that found me kind of things was I was the kid that all of my friends talked to me about sex. I didn't find that I had a whole lot of shame about my sexuality, but a lot of other people had shame for me. When I came home and said, yeah, I had sex with, 5 guys tonight, there was this look of shock and, this, oh my God, you're a slut, or how could you have done that? How could you give yourself away like that? And I'm like, I wasn't giving myself away, I was receiving. And then when I came home and I, told my family, actually my family found out that I liked not just men, but other people as well through a voicemail on a, one of those messenger things we had before we had voicemail. That, my mom was like, so this guy called and he was like, I have this girl who is into the same thing you're into. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a whole different scenario than me just being with a woman. And the conversation was, yeah, you might want to try it. Women are really good kissers. And that was me at like 18, so it wasn't, I don't know that I necessarily ever felt shame about my sexuality, but I did feel everybody else's pressure for me to feel that shame so that I would conform to some kind of thing that they could fit into a box. And I do remember sitting with my best friend as, you know, I've known her since I was about 3 years old, and sitting down at the place that we would hang out with as kids and saying, look, I just need you to be okay with who I am. And she's like, it's okay. It's just a phase. And so, you know, 40 years later, she's like, I get it. It's not a phase, you know? And to that point, I brought a friend with me to my home, my family's home today, to have a small afternoon barbecue with the babies. And I said, be prepared. They may ask if I'm sleeping with you, you know? And she kind of laughed. And she's like, it's none of their business. I said, it's not. But at this point, you know, in my mid 40s, to have my family say, wow, is this one of your lovers, is a very different place to be in than where I was, you know, 25 years ago or you know, 30 years ago, where there was just so much shock around, who is this person? Why does she keep having to push this limit? So for me, you know, sex and sacred sex is a lot about exploration and consciousness and being connected to the people that I'm with and having that be in a moment, and to honor the ebbs and flows. I've been with my husband for 23 years, my other partner for 5 years, and I've had other partners throughout that time that he and I've been together. And then prior to him, it was a whole lot different. You know, so just to have that consciousness and that awareness that each person brings to the table, and multiple people bring to the table, this ability to raise energy and consciously direct that energy. And then, you know, that sex magic. And so we talked about sacred sex and you know, conscious sex and tantra. But then there's like the ability to take that energy and make juicy things out of it. So it's really kind of exciting.
Yeah, I totally resonate with exactly what you're saying, Christine and Candace, because I also was very abused through my childhood. And that's a lot. It's all in my book. But as I grew up, and then in my very young 19, 20 years old, I was a sex worker. And as a sex worker, I chose it. No one pushed me into it. No one said, you know, do this and I'll, you know, no one forced me to do it. I ran my own business. I was very empowered. I embraced being a woman because I thought that's what we were supposed to do. I was just following what we were supposed to do. And I just also happened to be a sex worker. And I was a prostitute and a professional dominatrix eventually, and a cam girl and a phone sex operator. And I totally owned it for a long time, for 15, 20 years. I still to this day get checks from work that I did. And I will never, and people try to shame me for that. It's their shame, not mine, because they're putting it on me. And I'm like, I was a sex worker. You either accept me as is or, you know, go the other way. That's who I am. And to me, I chose to leave because I was done, just like anyone else that's worked somewhere for 20 years. At some point, you go like, I'm kind of tired of this job. I don't want to do it anymore. So I left. But it didn't mean that, it just that being a sex worker and sacred sex are two completely different things. But I did find that there were times with certain people, often other girls that were working in the industry, especially when I started to come to terms with being a lesbian, that sacred sex, it happened off camera. So just so you guys know, if you happen to watch pornography, it happened off camera. It did, and there were times that I was on the phone that things would get special or be special with one or two clients, usually cross-dressers. 99% of my clients were men. So, and I certainly had, you know, several lovers, and I was also polyamorous, and my family got to be sort of uncomfortable with any of my friends because they didn't know if they were my lovers or not. So I've had that exact experience. And now a lot of things have changed, and I'm okay with that. But I've made these decisions consciously. And I also am a big advocate for sex positivity, to be able to talk about sex and to be able to be present with sex. And so sacred sex, and I say, well, what's the difference between, sex, casual sex, maybe, or even paid for sex? There's a difference between casual sex, between somebody you have a one night stand with, or you just occasionally, or your fuck buddy, and then there's difference between someone that you paid to have sex with. That's just a service, no different than a massage. And then there's sacred sex. And that could happen in those situations, in special situations. I've been a witness to it. But it can also happen between you and your partner, or the person that you are in love with or choose to be with. And I think the sacredness comes up when we start to add our heart and our soul to the pot, to the juicy pot, right? So it's already juicy if you're having sex, but then when you start adding your heart and you start adding your soul to it and a little bit of practices, that's what makes it sacred. So can you guys tell me what makes sex sacred to you? What changes it? What's, the difference between casual and then like sacred sex?
I'll just jump right in. To me,
Go for it.
It's about union. There's a perception, a sensation, an experience of melding at one-ment, and that transcends my body, my partner's body. Don't know where I end, they begin. And where there's this experience of union with something greater or something timeless. Also, all things merge into oneness. So to me, that's like the spark of life, of passion, etc. But there's also something else that I want to mention that, to me, in my experience, personal, and all the research that I've done over the years, I've experienced the link between sexual healing and sacred sexuality. That sacred sexuality is fundamentally healing. And I've been thinking over the last year that perhaps there's a spectrum that we could talk about, where on one end is sexual trauma and abuse, harassment, non-consent, and on the other end is sexual healing or sacred sexuality, the antithesis of sexual abuse or trauma. I don't know, I've been framing it in that kind of polarity in my mind recently, and I've found there's mileage to be gained out of thinking about it that way.
That's really powerful. I love that. I do. Because for me, I walked into sex work as a trauma survivor and walked out seeing myself as a sexual healer. I absolutely identify as a sexual healer. That's just, and I just magically do it without even, sometimes I'm not even conscious of it. Like just by being me, by me saying, it's totally okay if you want to do that. I've already done that. It's no problem. We can do that. Just by being totally comfortable with it all, it kind of heals a lot of things.
Well, I would say that there's a distinction to be drawn in this, at this point in the conversation, then, between what I would call perhaps sacred prostitute and a couple or group, but let's just talk about a couple, both involving their hearts, both involving their souls. It's not a fee for service. It's not one person giving to the other. It's a mutual sharing, a mutual giving, and a mutual receiving. So that I would say both are sacred. The archetype of the sacred prostitute is powerful. Healing a warrior who comes home all traumatized, right, through touch and love, like that just makes my skin tingle to think about that. To heal someone who's gone through just hell and back, right? Like that is sacred work, absolutely. But that is different than two people both putting their hearts on the line, both giving and both receiving and experiencing it one with a greater force. Anyway, thank you for bringing that up, because that is sacred prostitute is sacred. That is sacred sex, but it's different than a couple both consenting to do it equally in a egalitarian way. Anyway, thank you.
Yes. There's definitely consent involved with definitely when a couple comes to terms with whatever they decide to do, it's definitely different. As the sacred prostitute, I've done some things as a sacred prostitute, I've even taught guys how to pleasure women. And
thank you.
that,
That say thank
I
you.
just like, why are there not more people doing this job? I thought at 22. At 22, I'm like, why are there not more people doing this? This isn't hard. Just show this poor guy how to do it. Next thing I know, he wants to get married and feels guilty for not being able to see me after seeing me for several years regularly. And then he gets a girlfriend and feels like by seeing me, he's cheating on her. And now he wants to marry her and feels like he needs to end the relationship with me and feels guilty. And I'm like, no, you graduated. What are you talking about? And I blessed him on his journey. Like, do it, man. I'm so glad that you're getting married and you're happy. Thank God. That's what we were working towards. We got there. So that's the gift of the sacred prostitute for sure. Candace, I could see that you have something just sitting there because the sacred prostitute and the sacred healing, I know that resonates for you.
Yeah. So, one of the things I like to say is I feel like I came into this world with the vagina on my forehead. I didn't ask for it, didn't know what to do with it, not even trying. But somehow everybody's just like, whoa. And
what do you mean?
And that was happening at a very young age for me. And I learned like, wow, I got some superpower here. Didn't know anything about it. And I was playing with it at a very young age. And I didn't have role models. Everybody was on drugs and alcohol around me. I ended up going down that path. And so I think sex work is amazing and beautiful. And I mean, I'm in the sex industry today from a conscious, sacred perspective. I was at one point when I was 16, from about 16 to 19, I was on the street prostitute side, addicted to drugs and alcohol. Not like it's scary. It's not. So, and for me, I had to re-enter the sex industry to heal myself. I was so traumatized. And I saw and I knew at the core of that, there was something about sexuality. And there was no traditional treatment or counseling. Like sexuality is just like, we just don't talk about it in a lot of traditional societally acceptable healing models. So that's how I ended up here. Like, at first I became a cam girl myself. Like, I was like, I gotta learn what this is. Like, I could see other people were enjoying me in this body, but I was not enjoying this body and wanted that to change. And so initially, I entered this all for my own healing. And, but man, since then, and, one of the things someone said about veterans, like, I'll never forget, like, there's this one, I've had so many memorable moments, of watching people just break open and finally feel their body and their heart again. But I remember a veteran once saying, like it just like tears coming down their eyes, and like they're just saying, you have no idea what you just did for this vet, and could not bring it to words. And he's like, I've not felt my heart in so long. And there's so many of us walking around that way. And when I say heart, and sacred sexuality to me is this place of my yoni, my sex center, being connected to my heart and my mind. Like, I tell people that want to relate to me personally, like, if you can't ignite my heart and my mind, my vagina is just not interested. Like, I just can't go there anymore. And that's like sacred sex to me. Like, it's that fully ignited and yeah. Ugh.
That's beautiful, Candace. Candace, a lot of us are shaking our heads and resonating with exactly what you're saying. Great. That's
I'm
beautiful.
blind, to those of you that don't know, so I can't see what's going on. So thank you, Hollis, for telling me.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead,
So
Christine.
yeah, I'm
Christine,
going to jump
I'm
in
sure
there
you have
too.
something. Go ahead.
Yes. I don't think life is black and white. It is not one side or the other. We constantly live on spectrums. And I'm just going to do a little plug here because I didn't put that I was an author, but I wrote a book on sexuality called Sacred, Not Secret. And it very specifically talks about our development through our body from an Eastern perspective, overlaying the Western stages of human development, but from a sexual perspective. And, I work a lot with people who have had sexual trauma in my own private practice. And the trauma focus versus trauma aware is also that place where we can find a cross section of the ability to take it from, instead of staying in the trauma, going to a place of healing, sexual healing. And I want to just, I want to kind of just, I guess, give a personal example where I first experienced it maybe 12 or so years ago. Was actually when my husband and I were with somebody else together, and our natural progression of that evening where we were all heart connected, we ended up singing to her as we were all making love. And at the end of the night, she was like, I have never experienced anything like that in my life. I felt so held and so safe and so loved that something opened up in me. So I started teaching around that time a class called Singing Through Sex. And that piece of holding that container for people to move from sexual trauma to sexual healing in a group where they were either with themselves or with partners or with multiple partners. But yeah, that's where I start to see that resonate. So Kris, thank you so much for bringing that up. The sacred whore, the sacred prostitute, that work is so important. And when we talked about shame before, like that's where I see a lot of like people don't get it. There is amazing amount of work done there that is so still in the shadows, in the dark, in not illuminated. Something where I do where at this point in my life, the healing pieces are personal. They're between me and my partners, or they're for myself because I'm not hands-on any longer. Once I got my license, that was no longer something that I was able to do. And so I deal with it from a different perspective. Yeah,
Christine, let me jump in right there. To anybody that might tune into this, watch this at any point in the future, if they have a feeling like they really could use some sexual healing work, a lot of people don't know what's available out there in terms of sexual healing. All they think of is prostitute or whore. And I put those in air quotes because they're often derogatory terms. But they don't know that there's actually professionals who go through schools and get accreditation and stuff like that. So just to tell some people out there, if they don't know, there's somatic sexual body workers. You can Google that. There's also somatic sex educators. Then there's sacred intimates. These are 3 keyword phrases that you can look up and learn about the differences between them. But there are people who specialize and have very clear boundaries. And you can check out their ratings and reviews and referrals and testimonials and like ask other people about them. Like it's not that you just have to go to that street corner where you see the street workers hanging out on a Friday night. Like there are safer alternatives.
Yeah, and I'll actually often refer. I work, so I'm a sex therapist with as a licensed mental health counselor, but I also work with sex coaches and sex surrogates. So I do refer out to people who are sexual somatic workers. So they've gone through the somatic training. So I actually work with people and refer out to those when needed. But yeah, that's a very good point. So thank you for bringing that up too.
Cool.
And I think that what happens is that we forget, like, what is sexual healing really? What happens in sexual healing? And I think that that's what Candace was talking about when she went consciously back into sex work. Because for sure, I've definitely encountered, the ones that are addicted to drugs and doing it for very desperate reasons. And then there are people that consciously choose that come in that are doing it for some other reasons. And there does seem to be a healing aspect to working as a sex worker for people that have been abused. I've seen it over and over again. It hasn't just happened for me. It's happened for other sex workers. And I think what happens is during that work, we sort of awaken to other people's sexuality, but also to our own. And we realize what we like, what we don't like, and what works for us and what doesn't work for us. And then as a result, we become more empowered as well, especially if we get into things like BDSM and things like that. We start to become empowered, and suddenly we're no longer these victims that walked into the sex industry. Now we're this empowered sexual being, and we're very connected to our sexuality, even though we were introduced to it like I was introduced at 5 years old, in a way that wasn't even my sexuality, right? It's the guy that was molesting me sexuality. It was his sexuality, and he was putting it on me. And he did that, and I've forgiven him at this point. Okay. I don't hold any anger. I see it as a reflection of a disease that's in our world that gets passed on, and it looks like child molestation. And it's unfortunate that it keeps happening that way, but it's usually they are abused as well. And my family proved that. So my family proved that molestation was passed down and passed down and passed down, because I also was in an incestuous home. And then when I became a sex worker, I really danced with all that happened to me, but also what happened to other people. And more, I started to realize that I wasn't just a victim, that I was just part of this larger collective of people that were experiencing this sexual disease, is what I would call it. And I was able to transform it. And I know that Candace is also, what she's talking about is the same thing. It's that transformation within us, that's something that happens as a sex worker that brings that out, that healing, that sexual healing. And why do we need sexual healing? Why do we need it? And right away it comes to me, well, most of us are walking through the world with some shame, if nothing else. And most of us have been raised to think that sexuality is shameful. So in sacred sex, there's lots of different kinds, right? And I just want to address something someone said. Eve said, Christopher, that is a valid point. I think it was your point earlier, and very powerful. It also addresses the concept of sex magic, where people who may work together towards a mutual working, as opposed to that, what has happened in many pagan groups, where a high priest or a priestess has taken advantage of naive initiates. The spectrum helps define healthy, conscious, consensual beauty of sacred sex. And I want to address that, because there's definitely people that take advantage of people in magical, spiritual situations that's sexual. And I just wanna say that definitely happens. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about consent. And I think if we're having this conversation, we have to talk about consent. So what does consent look like? Go, Kris.
Hell yes. That's what consent looks like, or hell no. That's the consent 101 for me. Well, no more. What is it? No more guesses. Only no's or hell yeses. That's the rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, like so what Kris is saying is, if you say I guess, that's not really a yes.
Or maybe means no.
And what means no, Candace?
Maybe means no.
I agree. Maybe means no in my world. Yeah. I'm not going to do that right now. Maybe I might change my mind, but not right now. Yeah. How about you, Christine? I'm sure you have something to say about consent.
Well, I mean, I was actually, when you posted Eve's, I was reading that, and I was reading her next comment. I'm sorry, I'm assuming. Their next comment about safe sex messaging and not just STIs, but emotional boundaries and expectations. And, I love the, if I want to today doesn't mean I want to tomorrow, cartoon and video that's gone out there that I may have said yes to this, an hour ago. And that doesn't mean that an hour later, I still want that. And I think that consent is a continual conversation. Absolutely. If it is anything but a yes, it is not consent. And I also think that we need a constant check-in. We need a constant flow of communication in a way that, everybody is so worried about breaking up the continuity of this beautiful, magical sexual experience. But there is a way to say, hey, are you still with me? Hey, are you still okay? Hey, is this still good? Are we moving in the right direction? Do we need to shift gears? That does not break that continuity, but actually adds a really beautiful element to it. Especially when I think about, mostly in like BDSM or kink scenes, I'm going to check in with somebody and say, are we still going? Are we still good? Are we still in a good place? And if I don't get a clear, we're still moving, the momentum is still moving, it's going to be backed down, and we're going to start to begin to end that situation. Anybody who is any kind of inebriated cannot consent. Right? Anybody who is in any altered state cannot consent. And that includes if I have just raised energy with you and you are now in this place of bliss, I am not going to change the rules. So yeah, Chris, I see you're like,
very interesting.
Go, Chris.
No, this is a very interesting thing. How many people get high and then have sacred sex? Like lots of people will get high and then feel like they're touching the divine. Right. They'll feel like they're touching a power greater than themselves with their partner through the sex act. But when we talk about consent education, we say you have to be ready, willing, able, and informed. And if you're under the influence of some mind-altering substance, you can't be those things. So we say you can't give consent if you're under the influence. But wait, subjective experience under the influence of lots of different substances for a lot of people is that, oh my God, I touched God. I saw myself in past lives together with you. Like they talk about these things. So it's an interesting thing you just brought up.
It is.
Here we're saying on one hand, consent is foundational to sacred sex, but yet we can't have consent if we're high. I don't know where we're going with this, but I'm just saying, like, oh, that's interesting.
So, I mean, to continue that conversation, if I have a partner that is somebody that I've been with for a decade and I trust them and we push the edge, then maybe pushing the edge contains some of that using of altering substances, but we've had that conversation beforehand. We've consented beforehand. We've agreed what to and not to do. And I can tell you on the other side of that, people coming out of those magical, mystical, godlike experiences when they're high, is a lot of times where I have seen people say, I didn't consent. I'm not okay with what happened. I feel really emotionally and spiritually violated. I know when I was high, I said it was okay, but I don't feel like it was okay, right? So an established relationship, perhaps you can negotiate those things and go to that place together. But I've had so many people say, like, that was not consensual. I did not agree to that in a sober state of mind. And I never would have done that if I had not taken some kind of substance. And now I feel like I have been sexually assaulted. And so it is, yeah, let's go there.
Well, okay, I'm just going to say I love touching the sacred or the divine with my partner, and I don't need anything in my body to do it. Mm-hmm. I love that my body creates this all on its own. Thank you very much. It's like all I need is me and my partner, and we can make those altered states of consciousness just with our own biochemistry. Like I don't need to take MDMA or LSD or any of these fashionable drugs that are out there right now. I love it. It's just like, it's right here. It's in my tissue. It's immediately available.
Yeah, exactly. I of course, I come to the understanding and the realization that most people that are drinking or doing some sort of drugs or something beforehand, unless it's some sort of like Christine outlined, like you're with a committed partner and the two of you decide to do this together. That's different than a lot of people do it because they're ashamed and they're trying to like push that shame down or far enough away so that they can push through and come on the other side. And sometimes I think you're right, Christine. If you're in a committed relationship and both people are okay with it, because there is some people are really carrying a lot of shame, a lot. And I don't. Sometimes I think that one of the best. Sometimes some people need to be under the influence, but you need to be able to have that conversation with that person.
It's to me, it's not any different than if one of my clients went to their doctor and their doctor said, here's a Xanax. You have so much anxiety, you cannot break through, you're having a hard time connecting with your partner. Try a Xanax before you try having sex, right? So I would prefer somebody, say, smoke a joint with their partner because that's something that they enjoy to do with their partner. They have consented to that, and it is something that they've discussed as part of their treatment, right? I'm not trying to dog anybody who says, I want to get high and have really good sex, right? I know that people do that, but there are so many options or so many opportunities for abuse and manipulation and assault in those situations when you're not in a safe space. And I don't want to totally glom like all of this. So I do think that there's nuances. You know, again, there's a spectrum. So as Kris has so beautifully brought up, if I have a partner that I trust and I feel safe with, and we've had multiple conversations and we have pushed an edge without any kind of substance, maybe do I want to try a substance with them and push that a little bit further? Possibly. You know, I generally tend not to as an individual, but there are people who do, and they say, hey, like, how do I do this in a safe way? Versus I'm going to go to a club and I'm going to go to a party and I'm going to take something that's going to put me outside of my body so I feel really good. And then I wake up the next morning on somebody's couch. You know, that's a very different kind of, and both of those things have happened to me, by the way. So very different situation. So yeah, I mean, just, you know, putting that out there. There is a spectrum.
Yeah. Candace, do you have something to input about consent?
Yeah, I'm just definitely agreeing with, you know, what everyone is saying. You know, with all the events that I do, it's been very important. Like, we always have it in our languaging. You know, the substances other than, you know, marijuana are not, you know, we all have to be on the same playing field, basically, you know, is how I see it. And especially for me as a blind person, like, I can totally tell when someone is not on this, they're on another level. They're just, they have escaped this 3D world. This 3D world is too much. I get it. But for me personally or professionally, that's not a safe container to explore sexually. But yes, also, you know what I mean, within consciously, prior to taking any medicine or substance, you create the container, and then you don't change the container. When you're in the container, then it could work. Yeah, and then this also makes me think, you know, there's professionals that assist with this as well. To really, you know, make sure you're safe with whatever medicine or experience you're having, or like, what are your intentions for the medicine? And that person who is not out there with you can help you keep really in those intentions so you can get the medicinal high frequency connect to the divine experience of the, I would say, medicine versus substance. I don't do alcohol and substances, so yeah.
Yeah, and I totally resonate also what Christine said earlier is about when you are in the middle of it, when it comes to consent, you can check in again and again. Is this okay? It doesn't take much. It just takes a quick question. Is this okay? Are you good? And the person can just be like, yeah, or actually, can we, right? And sometimes some people really have a hard time, I found, especially survivors of abuse have a really hard time finding out where the boundaries are and how they got there, um, and even what they are. I know that I personally struggled with it for a long time. I had people, my clients wanting to do cocaine and things like that, and me having to figure out that that was a boundary for me, that I'm not okay with that. But it took me a couple of times first, and it took me some other things in private situations to go, you know what, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. And so I think that exploring your boundaries is part of sexuality. And if you can't tell your partner, who can you tell? Like if you're in a committed relationship, or even if you're just dating someone, if you can't tell them that you don't like this or that, then who would you tell? This is the closest person they're sharing an intimate experience with you. So like, I feel like boundaries and consent are super important. It is the foundation for sacred sexuality. It is the foundation. Go ahead, Kris.
Yeah. So Hollis, well, it's really funny. I've got a course that I made a mini course of called Practical Tips for Cosmic Sex. Now you could call it Sacred Sexuality, but I just called it cosmic because I was like, but people don't know how to do it. They don't know how to get there. A lot of people are like, they have this idea, this romantic notion, this like gut intuition that it exists, but they don't know how to access it. It's not common in common culture or common dialogue. So anyway, I just was reminded of that. And I just want to run through a couple of the points because people might be asking, well, how do I get there? I live in the real world. I got kids and dirty dishes. How do I actually get there? So I'm just going to power read through like my outline real fast.
Go for it. Go for it.
There's a lot of problems and challenges that we have because we live in the real world. We might have sadness or disappointment. We might a guy or a person with a penis might have a erectile dysfunction, or there might be a difference in libido between you and your partner, or somebody might have lost interest. There might be inability to orgasm or physical pain during sex. Or there's lots of things that, we might have children. We might have an elderly parent that lives with us, long distance relationship, all these things. So how do you actually get to sacred sex? And I say like, well, number one, here's my like basic little toolkit of like, okay, if you don't know how to start, try this, see if it works for you or not. It works for me. Is think about creating a ritual. Think about creating an intention. Think about having maybe a prayer that you want. You talked about sex magic, Christine, right? Like maybe there's something that you want to manifest in your life or call in. So think about that. Allow yourself to try on for size. If I was going to have a prayer or a ritual for something in my life, what would that look like? And allow yourself to like come up with an idea, right? Allow yourself to feel into creating that. Maybe you've never done that before. And then like have a conversation with your partner about it. Share that you want to do something like that. Ask them what they're interested in and like make a plan for it, like in some undisturbed time, right? And then create the space. Maybe make the bedroom up nice. Get a new set of sheets or go to a nice hotel. Get flowers, like put some intention into crafting it, right? And not just the space, but your body also. Right? Prepare your body, bathe, cleanse, maybe get some oil or take care of that wart you got on your hand or hemorrhoids that have been bothering you. Like take care of your body as the sacred vessel for it, right? And then prepare your mind and like focus on relaxing and being in the present, not thinking about all the things, but practicing mindfulness, And then like when you're actually with your partner, like state an intention with them. Like, I hope that this brings us closer together. Start by deep breathing with each other, putting your foreheads together or something like that. If you have a prayer, say it out loud to your partner, for example. And you can anoint your partner's body with oil, right? Or smudge them with sage or do some beautiful thing. Or maybe have a gift. Giving of gifts can often be a ceremonial thing, right? During weddings, we often give a wedding band or flowers or something like that. and then maybe like get to your bodies to touch and start swaying or something like that. Like not going straight for sex, but going for embodied connection, breathing and feeling the texture of your partner's body, connecting with them in the present moment, right? Getting out of your head, swaying, kind of dancing, then maybe sitting in Yabyum, which is just like sitting cross-legged and having your partner sit on your lap. You get your belly together, your heart together, you're facing each other, you can kiss, you can hug easily. Like it really helps you to feel connected, right? And if you feel compelled to share something from the heart to your partner, share it. If this is the container that you build that gives the safe space for this thing to come up, then let it be, right? And if you make love, wonderful, that's great. But then afterwards, like integrate with your partner. Share what you loved. Thank your partner. Thank for yourself. Thank the divine, maybe give a blessing. Maybe like send that beautiful thing that you did with each other out to an intention or a desire in your future. That this like helps build a stronger foundation, or this brings more abundance into our life, or this like brings us a child. Like we haven't even talked about like conception in terms of sacred sexuality, the sacred divine, birthing, bringing life into being. Anyway, a lot of people don't know how to get there. They don't even know where to start, right? So you can think about like, making a prayer or a ritual or an intention, having a beautiful experience with your partner, giving a gift, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, touch, massage. Go, Candace.
So I'm really woo woo and out there, like as far as spirituality and sacred. But for those of you who aren't so woo woo, like what I like to think of, because sometimes I'm like, man, that woo woo stuff, I get it. The science, like the sheer fact that sexual energy is what creates life. We are all like God creating life. Now you take that energy and put it into an intention, a manifestation, something you want to let go of, or whatever it is. Like that's kind of how I like to think of sacred sexuality from a more agnostic or atheist or humanistic perspective. Just how magnificent this body is and everything it can create. And then pleasure, how like you could be having the worst day, but in a good sexual experience, you are not thinking of any of that. And then like with kink, one of the things I really love about it that I want to speak into is, and especially with kink, but I feel like in general, we're often doing emotional, psychological healing work in our fantasies. Our fantasies or our desires in some areas are often deep emotional, spiritual, psychological needs for healing.
Beautiful, Candace.
I don't know if you guys can hear the fireworks behind me, but every time you were talking, Candace, and every time you'd have like this uprising, the fireworks were going off, and I was like, yes, this is fantastic. So Kris, my husband and I used to teach a class called the 45-minute orgasm. And the first thing we said to people is you can't have a 45-minute orgasm in 45 minutes, right? So the preparation and the setup of that space and the, the creation of that container is really, really important. And if you don't ever get to intercourse, right, the actual, whatever your culmination or climax, I should say, is okay. That creating of that space and that building of that that kind of rhythm of your sex. And I think, Candace, it's really important to recognize that scientific and that biophysical aspect of what's happening to our bodies as we are allowing those chemicals to have a space to play, right? So we are raising that energy. Yes. So we talk from a woo perspective, but we are literally releasing these chemicals in our body that keep us balanced and healthy and help us to cleanse and to have less stress and less cortisol in our life on a regular basis if we're creating that container. And I want to make it a point, because we've been talking a lot about partnered sex, from every part of that spectrum. I'm really big on helping people and encouraging people to have a self-practice or self-love practice, a daily practice of check in with yourself and your own sexual energy. And it's not just okay, it's almost necessary in order for you to have that good connection with a partner, is to know where you are. Where are your ebbs and flows? What is your cycle like? What are you liking today that, maybe you didn't a week ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago? And what are you not liking? And explore yourself, because we change every single day. And so for me, it's like this, you said, like, to bring it back to children and conception, but even more that playfulness of, like, who am I today? What is my body like today? Where's that spot today? Do I still like it on the upper left-hand part of my clitoris today? Like, or do I want to try the right side or underneath or above? Or do I want to stick something inside? And like, so that playfulness with the self, I find, is so incredibly important, whether or not you are having sex with somebody else. And I think it's maybe even more important when you are having sex with somebody else to kind of let that energy rise up and not always release it, but allow yourself to kind of feel like, what is your ebb and flow? So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Yeah, totally. I'm so glad you said something, Christine, because masturbation, I believe, is the key to being an excellent lover. So if you're one of those people that worries about if you're a good lover, that is one of the keys, is getting comfortable with yourself and I think if you can create a container for yourself, you can probably help create a container with your partner. You can at least help guide your partner into how that might look. And I just think that by knowing yourself, that you become, you're more present during sex, because you're less worried about all kinds of things, because things can distract us from having sex. When we're having sex, we everything from anxiety to regular life distractions and all kinds of things. So, but look at the time. The hour has flown, and I want to say, let's take a quick commercial break. Everybody take a few minutes, and when we come back, we're going to get into the details of sacred sex.
WLFE Digital Broadcast Network is on TV. You can watch all of our shows on WLFE-DB.com. Check out our channels: Paranormal View for all of your paranormal type shows, LGBTQ Friends for all of our LGBTQ shows, Variety Unlimited for all other shows. It runs 24/7 right on WLFE-DB.com. You'll even catch the lives, all in one place. Never miss an episode, past or future. WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows. Search for your favorite shows like Where's My Sage, Inside the Drag Closet, Across the Pond, Everything Yet Nothing, Paratalk Radio, Step into the Paranormal, The Creepy Parlor, Just Cindy, and more. Now you won't miss an episode. Remember, follow Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Make sure you subscribe and follow your favorite WLFE-DB radio shows. You can find our shows where you listen to your favorite podcasts, like Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and more. WLFE-DB Radio is looking for podcasts to join our family. You don't have to fit any strict genre. We're a plethora of shows. If you're looking to jump on a growing network, then contact us at WLFEDBradio@gmail.com.
Wow, Amazon Music just got a whole lot better. Your favorite shows from WLFE-DB Radio can now be found there. Yes, we are on Amazon Music, found under podcasts. Download the app, find podcasts, and search all of your favorite shows. Shows like Where's My Sage, Across the Pond, Everything Yet Nothing, Skeptical Help Bar, The Creepy Parlor, Just Cindy, and much more. Now you don't have to miss an episode ever. Amazon Music is WLFE-DB Radiofied.
More from WLFE-DB Radio Network. after this. Oh, yeah. Life just got sweeter now that WLFE-DB has merchandise. Show your support by purchasing your t-shirts for WLFE, Paratalk Radio, Inside the Drag Closet, and more. But it doesn't stop there. T-shirts, coffee mugs, tanks, buttons, cloth bags, and more. Go to WLFE-DB.com. On the top bar, click on the merchandise tab and bam, there you go. You got merch. Support the shows. WLFE-DB.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. We sure do miss LeKross and his dream interpretation in this moment. And I want to welcome back everybody else and bring everybody out real quick. Welcome back, everybody. I hope your break was good. Welcome. So one of the things that Eve actually kind of touched on it a little bit in her message. I want to read it out loud because sometimes this talk is only heard on radio. So if people are trying to raise energy for a specific working in sex magic, there needs to be a level of knowing what to expect. And then if one reaches a trance state, there needs to be awareness to allow them time in the divine realms without additional contact beyond perhaps holding or an arm or a hand on an arm as an anchor, if so expressed in wishes prior to the working. And I think that is beautiful and addresses exactly where I want to go, which is, how do we create a sacred experience with each other as partners? How do we do that? Like, okay, so we've created this beautiful container. It doesn't have to be kink. It can be kink if you'd like it to be, if you and your partner are in agreement of that. Or it could be just energetic connection. Sometimes it is just about like sort of the intention that Candace talked about, where you're both focusing on the same thing. So why don't we talk about the details of creating a sacred sex experience, what that can look like, and maybe some techniques that we can learn and look at and learn about. Does anybody, I'm sure you have some information, Kris or Christine?
Yeah. Okay. If you're uptight, if you're in your head, if you're like really tense, if it's not going to open the gateway. Now, if you're breathing, you're breathing in your belly, you're feeling your whole body, right? Maybe you're moving, maybe you're using your voice, you're embodied. That's going to help you open the gateway to this dimension. So there's this aspect of embodiment. A lot of people aren't familiar with it. A lot of people are, but just to name it, it's a simple pathway to get into your body. Breathe, use your voice, vocalize, move, feel, right? Not be sitting in your head worried about, am I going to come too fast, or do I stink, or is my partner not in love with me, or whatever the preoccupation that we might have. No, it's shifting your focus into an embodied experience. And that's simple: breath, movement, voice.
Mm-hmm. 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 How about you, Christine?
Well, I mean, so for me, it depends on how much time I have, how intricate I want the situation to be. Is there a focused intent, or is this an exploration? So probably some suggestions for all of those things. With one of my partners, he carries around a crystal that reminds him of me, and for him, because we are long distant, that is the embodiment of me when I'm not there. So he carries it with him everywhere that he goes. And so when we come back together, because we see each other about every 2 weeks, he asks me to hold that, right? So he's like, would you please hold this for me? And it really starts the night for the two of us, where we, it brings back us to center. So all of life kind of falls away, the babies fall away, the kids fall away, the dishes fall away. And it's like, right, you've been carrying me in this physical embodiment for a couple of weeks and we haven't seen each other. And I want to feel like what you've put in that, but I also want to help you to recharge that. Sometimes that recharging is actually inside of my body, right? So sometimes we actually use the vaginal canal for recharging crystals and all sorts of beautiful things. I happen to actually have a 5,000-year-old crystal dildo, which is really cool.
What?
Yeah, it's very, very cool.
Scratch the needle off the record with that one. 5,000 years old crystal dildo?
Yes. Oh my God, it's amazing.
Can you show us?
Yes, I guess I can at some point. So, I mean, that's one piece, is utilizing a tool, right? Because tools bring our psyche to a place where our mundane mind can't get to. And that's something simple and consistent, or again, my husband and I, we used to talk about the dishes, right? The dishes, and Kris, you mentioned that the dishes are going to bring my mind to, oh my God, what's happening in the kitchen? So the sacred piece of that becomes, we fuck over the kitchen sink, right? And so the dishes, the mundane aspect of life, becomes sacred. We remember that it's not about, oh my God, the kid and the dishes and the laundry and the vacuuming and all. It's, oh my God, we are having sex on the couch, because that is our home. It is not just about the bedroom. So sometimes for us, and to be fair, I have an almost 2-year-old and a 22-year-old. I'm in my 40s. I did this again, so we're like trying to be creative and remember that, like, we own this whole space. It is not just the bedroom space. But in other aspects, like that 45-minute orgasm, if I need to feel safe enough to be able to let go like that, I do need the dishes done. I do need the laundry at least put behind a door. I need the house vacuumed. I need to, or more likely now, I need to be in a hotel room. Yep. Because I don't want to think about all of the mundane aspects of life that are going to just distract me or draw me outward, so that I can completely enter my body and trust my partner to hold that. And both of my partners, because I have 2 partners right now, both of my partners are incredibly good at saying, go, like, take off. I'm here. I'm holding you. Like, just go. Like, take it wherever you need it to go. And then the more focused aspect is, what do I do with that energy? Do I just let it go out as a general prayer of love to the universe, or do I want to manifest something like a new car? So I just kind of threw that in there for jokes. But sex magic is, I mean, like, I've learned to take that orgasmic energy, right? So the climax energy, and create a tether to whatever the visualization is of what I want to manifest. And I very intentionally and specifically will raise energy for focused work, things that I want to manifest into my life or that I need in my life. So there's so many aspects of how do we set up the scene or set up the space for creating that sacred sexual experience. And a lot of times, I'll tell you, the focused orgasmic energy is mostly with myself. So that is where the self-love, the masturbation, that kind of playfulness with the self is. If I want to manifest, like $17,000 to go get my doctorate in, clinical sexology, I'm going to probably use my orgasms with my self-love to put that energy out there so that the money comes back to me. So that's my little yeah. I'll have to see if I can have somebody run up and get me the dildo while we're talking.
I want to see it.
All while the
before
fireworks
we sign off.
The fireworks are going off, which is hilarious. So yeah, and I think sacred sexuality is it can be really beautiful when, at least for me, I've really enjoyed the ecological, like the connection to nature. I'm very much an environmentalist, and so wanting to heal nature with my own sexuality is sort of and I think there was actually I read an article about it and I was laughing because I was like, oh, I'm not as weird as I thought I was. And so ecosexuality or something like that. And that's another way, is to get out into nature, get away from everyone, get out into someplace beautiful and make love with your partner. You can really create beautiful, sacred sexual space in nature, especially if you are able to get in the wilderness. Hey, Candace, I bet you have some beautiful ideas about creating sacred space.
There's been there's so much rich content, and so sexual energy at its essence is creative energy. So there is an infinite supply of things you can do beyond genitally focused sexuality. And some of the big things I think about with this, I am brought to want to think of a relationship to self-pleasure. And what I often tell my clients is, like, your self-pleasure practice is going to be like your gym for you learning how to work with your energy. Because when you're with someone else, it's a lot harder to focus on yourself. So it's really, really key, your self-pleasure practice. And then what you said about nature, for me, and I think another component of the science that I think about with sexuality is life. This earth, of a tree, of a flower, and like we can connect to that energy. That I am a single person, like technically, I have lovers per se, but I'm single. So I have to get really creative on how can I play with this energy? And it so many times, like, I can have amazing orgasmic experiences with myself or with someone else that does not involve my genitals. Mm-hmm. When we learn to connect to that part of our body from like an inside way versus just the physical, or somebody else is doing something to us, or we're trying to make something happen, it's just happening. that's sacred to me, and how I like to reel it in and feel like are other key factors in creating a sacred sexual relationship with oneself. I feel like that's, and life, like sacred sexuality is like how we relate to everyone and everything around us. Like we are all products of sexual energy. It is what we are at our core. So if we're not comfy with that, it will impact everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know what, Candace, what comes to mind about having sexual orgasmic experience without involving the genitals is I know that you and that I know that you're open to the experience of being with someone that lives in a wheelchair. And
Mm-hmm.
I have been with people that don't have the option of involving their genitals, frankly. They can, but they don't feel much, and it's not very much fun. But I did find that when I did have those experiences with that particular woman, that I was very blessed in finding other ways to have that orgasmic experience with a person that didn't have to engage their genitals at all. And that really changed my world, because I was also with her husband, and he sometimes missed the genital part of it, but the three of us together were able to still have this heart-centered experience, and she was even able to experience compersion through him experiencing the genital experience with me and her witnessing it. And so I think that there is magic that can happen even without the genitals. That's a special part, but that there's also some magic to be had beyond that. So, and I think that that's one of the go, Kris, go for it.
Well, hold on. I'm going to take this opportunity to dive deeper into the genitals and say that body fluids, period sex for premenopausal women, you're saying, hey, what are some tips about sacred sexuality? Well, making love, having penis and vagina intercourse during menstruation can be incredibly powerful. A lot of women have told me that they feel like their blood is something that they feel reverent about, that they want to make an offering. They want to pour it on the ground when they're on their moon, or they want to touch it on their third eye, or they want to pray with it, or something like that, feed a plant in their house with it, or something like that. So making love on her moon can absolutely be like a conduit to a certain level of depth of connection that we could call a gateway to the sacred. I want to put that on the table at least and discuss it, or come. These body fluids can be so bonding. Not that you can't have sex if you're wearing a condom during, or male condom or female condom during penis and vagina intercourse. Of course you can, have sacred sex with that. But I want to name body fluids as a very bonding thing where you feel like you're sharing your DNA. You're sharing the essence of your body with the other person. And this returns to my personal experience of at one-ment. Becoming one with my partner, becoming one with the universe, or if a solo sex session, try saying that 10 times fast, union with the divine while I'm making love with myself. Right. But body fluids, like these are sacred to me, not things to just be thrown away or thought of as dirty. I like to reframe that, at least to name it in our conversation here.
Agreed. And definitely, there's female ejaculate, women that ejaculate can be embarrassing at times. If the other person, first of all, if it happened unexpectedly and you're like, right. Oh totally. My God,
I just wet the bed.
Which happened to me, like I was like, what's wrong with me, and it took me a little time to realize that I was a female ejaculator. And, we had fun with it later and learned to celebrate it. But for sure, the mess of it was sometimes embarrassing, especially if the other people are not expecting it. Some people find it really sexy, and then some people are like, you just got this all over my bed. And I can soak somebody's bed in a few minutes. And I know there's other women out there, other people with vaginas that also may experience ejaculate, that it can be a little unexpected, but it's real. And it does, they have proven the science of it, especially if you're having a sacred experience. For me anyway, if I'm having a sacred experience, it's probably going to come up. And when it does, it actually comes from a different place. Some people think it's pee or whatever, but it's not. And I learned very quickly that it wasn't, because I always have to pee afterwards. I'm like, oh no, I gotta pee, you know. But you know, so I just want to also name that you're not the only one. If you happen to ejaculate and you happen to have a vagina and ejaculate, please understand that it's actually quite normal. And you can teach yourself to ejaculate as well.
And you can have sex
with that. Okay.
You can have sex on a stool in the shower. If you come a lot, like, and it's like too much to do on a bed because it's just, you can't handle it. It's just too much. Like, it just, on a stool in the shower is a beautiful place to do it. You can relax and then let it all flow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I used to recommend people try it in the shower first if they were afraid of the mess. And you know, just to throw a little humor, I have a blanket that really should keep the fluids from hitting the bed, but my ex-girlfriend was one of those people that soaked through even that. And she used to joke, she's like, you need like a splash guard. And I'm like, I am your splash guard. You know, like, it was just one of those things. And it was I found it so absolutely powerful and beautiful. And I was envious because, yes, did I learn how to do that? Absolutely. Was it a process? Oh, yes. There's a lot of emotional stuff and safety and trust that I had to go through with my own body and not feeling like I was betraying myself. And then with my partner and not feeling like it was a nuisance. And like all of this stuff that like my girlfriend could get me to do it, but my husband could not for a little while kind of stuff. And, you know, like there is this emotional complexity to that piece. But again, I also talked to women who were like, oh my God, my boyfriend was like, what is she doing? She's peeing on me. And I'm like, dude, you're doing a great job. Like, you're doing a great job. Keep doing it and get a pad, you know, like just let it go kind of thing. But you're right. Some people, they have that experience and they are completely shocked and their body just kind of goes inward. And so going almost back to the beginning of today, like that trauma and healing piece, you know, when somebody experiences that and the reception is not welcoming, there is this kind of withdrawal inside of the body that to explore that and have that burst wide open again in a place that is safe is absolutely amazing. But
yeah, for sure.
Yes. So the other thing about that is my husband and I have exchanged fluids from almost the beginning of our relationship. Blood and semen, incredibly powerful, something we've used, throughout the years to energize our relationship. And then when I started dating my other partner about 5 years ago, I was like, hey, how do you feel about ejaculating in a cup for me for about 30 days so that we can get a full moon cycle? And he's like, what? Okay. And so we met and we combined, you know, like blood and semen. And he's like, what is happening? And so we talked through it and he was like, all right, I'm in, you know, like before we actually had these things combined. And this was a binding situation because we did not want to have biological children. So we did a working so that we did not. And so
why did he come in a cup for 30 days? What? Why did he come in a cup? I missed something there.
Oh, because we were doing a working to bind our fluids so that we did not conceive a child. So we did a magical spell with our body fluids, with our vaginal fluids, seminal fluids, and blood to make sure that we did not have a biological child together. And so what I was saying is this is this guy coming into my life and I'm going, hey, like there's this thing I'd like to do with you. How do you feel about that? And yeah, he was pretty cool with it, which was why we're still together, 5-something years later. But so yes, I just wanted to come back to your point, Kris, that fluids are incredibly powerful. And if we use them consciously, so many things. bringing together, that kind of conception, but also blocking that conception of physical child or magical manifestation or not. So we can use them in a lot of different ways.
I want to just say that Eve says there are actually black pads for the bed that are similar to the medical ones that are available online for mattress protection. Isn't that fantastic? Thank you, Eve. Thank you so much. Because I've witnessed it in a lot of different contexts, and it can definitely be a thing. So anyway, so we have dived into a lot of parts of sexuality, and I can't help but come into Tantra, because Tantra is everybody has at least heard of it or has some ideas about what it might be. And I think that it shows, I've read some books on it, and I know, Christine, you have some education about it. And for me, I've come to the conclusion that it's actually what you're feeling in sacred sex, and that it can be accomplished with some consciousness from both partners, of course, and consent and all of the things we've talked about, as well as like some breathing, breathing together, and trying to sort of align your bodies together in a breathing exercise. And so I'm sure you guys have more to say about Tantra, and how it shows up, how's it showed up in your life. What have you learned about it?
I can start.
Go, yeah. Christine. Go, Candace.
So my first response to this, is Tantra is everything. Tantra is life. Tantra essentially translates to mean to weave. So I feel like we've been talking about Tantra this whole time, but just like so is life, or so is sexuality, there's genres or degrees. Like some people only practice Tantra in the bedroom, or some people only go to Tantra because they want to work on their ED or PE. And for some people like me, it's everything. It's life. And yeah, I feel like it's really, it's everything we're talking about and so much more. But some of us, just like sexuality, like when I say sex, I don't mean intercourse. We pigeonholed a lot of these big, amazing things into these little tiny boxes. Tantra is one of those.
Yeah. How about you, Christine? I think I remember your post just the other day about Tantra. Do you remember what that was?
Oh, absolutely. Because I've been thinking a lot about Tantra recently, especially with appropriation and appreciation, and and this concept, really integration. And I don't know anything that is more ancient or parallels Tantra, right? And so to kind of echo Candace, Tantra is more than a sexual practice, right? The sexual practice is a part of tantric practices, but Tantra is a way of life. And so what I was trying to figure out is if anybody had any ideas of another practice that was even near Tantra, even near this way of being and living, and does it have an origin? Does it have another name? Does it have the same properties? And so for me, yes, I have practiced Tantra in walking, right? In meditative walking, in the way that I eat, in the way that I communicate via words or written content. And obviously I've integrated that into my sexual practice. Breath is absolutely a part of that practice. So even as I'm talking about this, and I remember how humbling it feels to have that universe be infinite, the way that I speak has slowed down and the breath has changed. And so when I think of Tantra, I don't think just of sex. I think that sex is a part of the way that we live. And so, you know, again, I'm gonna point back to Kris and conscious cock, like being conscious in every way that we interact with people is Tantra. But I am not a tantric master. I would not claim to be. It is so ancient that I feel incredibly humbled just by the existence of it. Tantra, yes. Sex magic too. You know, and there's it's so hard to unravel Tantra from everything that we do because it is so intricate to life and breath. So that's kind of where I'm sitting with that right now is I feel incredibly humbled, and I want to be able to really integrate and listen to and learn even more. And that's not to say that I haven't, but I feel right now in my life, in my mid 40s, like I know nothing. I really feel like I know nothing, and the more that I know, the more there is that I don't. And like I'm kind of there in my place with Tantra, and it's a constant remembering and a constant waking up to and becoming. So that's kind of how I am and where I am right now with Tantra. So to put that in a sexual realm, as long as I can remember that I'm constantly becoming and I'm remembering myself and I am constantly awakening in sex, then I feel absolutely connected and creative and powerful, while simultaneously humbled and feeling really, really small in the grand scheme of things. So that's my little spiel on my interaction with that concept.
Yeah, beautiful. Kris, you got anything?
I don't have much to speak to Tantra.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't.
Yeah, one of the things about Tantra for me is exactly what Christine is saying, is that it's not necessarily just sexual. And I think Candace talked about it too, is that it's just kind of a way of living, of being present. And I find also that if that's how you come to consciousness through sex, then so be it. Because some people are naturally attracted to sex and they want to deepen their sexual experience or whatever that is, and that's the first thing they're drawn to, right? Because it's so popular, because it's out there, because that's what you heard of, right? And if that's what brings you to consciousness, then so be it. That's your path, right? And so I think that Tantra has definitely a place in the world, and hopefully not only do you learn consciousness not just in sex, but also in your walk and in how you live your life and how you do things every single day. And so even in mundane tasks, right, Christine, although I love your idea of having sex next to the dirty dishes. And I think that's beautiful. And at the same time, I also think that sex magic is really powerful. It's amazing how you can manifest things with just intention, and how you can change your life and transform even yourself. And I want to talk to being queer. And I know that you can talk to a little bit about that, Christine and Candace, and that sometimes when you're queer, sexuality can be a little, it's kind of hard to put words on it, but sometimes when you're queer, sexuality can be almost a little like, oh, this is okay. There's a lot more shame, yes, and there's also this idea of what is lesbian sex? What is sex between two women? And what is sex between two men? And as a person that's experienced all sorts of situations, I would say that lesbian sex, at least in my experience, has had a lot of emotion, is the most emotional sex I have ever had. Sex between women, between two women. Now, sex between two men, I've witnessed and been an encourager of. And as a result, I've witnessed that their sex seems to be amongst gay men, they seem to have this sacred connection of just being okay to fuck. It's kind of like there's not always the moment to take time out for all the emotionality of it and things like that, where you see in heterosexual relationships, and lesbians just dive deep into the emotion. And that's why lesbians can be in bed for, I'm not kidding, 4 to 6 hours, no problem. There's something about lesbian sex that's sacred in that way. And I just want to talk to that, because this is a queer show, and that happens. And if you've ever witnessed 2 women together, I'm sure, Kris, you have, when you witness 2 women together, you're like, holy shit, you're kind of taken aback by it. Like, I know the first time I witnessed it, I was just torn, taken aback. So I just want to talk a little bit about the sacredness of queer sexuality. Like, what is that? What does it look like? Christine, I know that you have a girlfriend, so you have some idea of what it's like to have queer sacred sexuality, right?
I don't currently have a girlfriend. I don't know how many more people I can handle right now, especially women. Oh, man. And I love and I miss that. And the last girlfriend I had, she kind of took pieces of my heart with her when she disappeared. So I haven't really recovered. I'm in this place of exploration about, it's funny for me because I was more with women than men. And I don't even want to say men and women, because I think gender is a little bit bigger than that. But I realized the other day that I am actually afraid to be with women again. And I think this is coming up because of that relationship, and because I didn't realize how much my heart had been broken. The funny part between her and I was that we were both really powerful, dominant personalities. So in bed, it was like, well, who's going to take top? And so we would have these conversations. The sex was phenomenal, but as we're talking about this, what I was really remembering was my first girlfriend that taught me about orgasming without penetration, without even genitals touching, without, like, you mean that if I rub my body on your leg and we are making out and our bodies are like, we're entwined, my body responded in a way that brought on climax and orgasm. And luckily I was young as this was happening. So I think that my relationship, in all of my relationships, men, women, or neither or both, was really impacted by that, was that sex is not penetration. It is not intercourse. I taught sex ed for, a decade. I worked for a sex toy company, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to say foreplay is sex. Like, stop thinking about it as being pre-sex. It is sex. And the more time you spend in this place that you call foreplay, the more intense your connection and your even orgasm is going to be. So I think that I learned that early on. We could talk about things like what they call lesbian bed death, right? We're in this constant conversation that we never get to sex. But I have experienced that with my male partner, who is also queer, and so, like, there are these emotional pieces that I think we assign to different types of sex. And I can't speak to 2 men having sex. I know that I absolutely, when I watch porn, which is very rare, I much prefer gay male porn, because it seems like they are enjoying themselves. And really, it's the enjoyment for me that excites me. It's not necessarily the act. And I've talked with my husband about it, and it's something that we do discuss about this cultural aspect of, it's easier for him to go and have sex and then have no emotional connection than it is for me. But I don't know that that's about me as a woman, or is that me because I feel like I'm a demisexual and I need some kind of emotional connection? Like, I don't know, and to take all of that apart, I don't know that I really care to take that apart at this point in my life. I just want to have that connection with somebody that I'm sharing my body with in bed, because my time and my body and my energy is valuable. and who I share that with is important. I have had incredibly deep sexual experiences with my male partners. And I don't know if anybody's ever experienced going to this void, this vast, dark void where you could have almost everything like manifest in that. I don't even know how to explain what it is. It's infinite, but it doesn't have a container. And I know we've talked a lot about containers here today and creating that container. The next step for that was, for me, was releasing that container and recognizing that there is this place to go. And that was with a male partner, not with a female partner. So, you know, like everything I thought about, oh, I could do this with a woman because we can go to this deeper place. I was absolutely shocked and beautifully shocked in this blissful experience with a male partner. So I don't know that gender, I know I don't want to diminish that there are gender aspects. But for me, I feel like I've had this plethora of experience that defies those stereotypes. And I don't know if I am unique in that, or if we're just not talking about it because we don't necessarily have those experiences. So that's my little, does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. It does. But, you know, for me, I'm both. So like one of my favorite people in the world, she said, oh, it must be like being best, you know, the best of both worlds. And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. You know, yeah, you got it. So, you know, but that's part of being a transgender person. And I actually think gender bend is the sexiest thing a person can do. It's a turn on for me. And I think that there are other people in the world that also think, although there's also like some people that fetishize it and stuff like that. And I get that can be hard for transgender people. And at the same time, I'm also attracted to it. So I guess that makes me pansexual or whatever. So Candace, do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
Yeah. Just on that last piece, goodness. I have always felt confused around this whole gender thing now, especially as a blind person. I can't, like my last partner, when I first met them, I didn't know how they identified. And that didn't really matter to me. You know, I experienced soul connections with people. And I personally, like, I've had a hard time being a woman sometimes. And I've caught myself blaming certain genders or certain like pools of people. And so going into a more androgynous viewpoint, that's how I spiritually view us. We all carry certain degrees of masculine and feminine is what feels best to me. Like, it's how I roll. I can honor other people's choices and how they identify in their body. I see and feel the entirety of the spectrum. And when I say that masculine and feminine, I'm referring to it energetically, not genderly, if that's a word. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thanks for sharing that, Candace. I totally get it. Yeah. Kris, do you have anything to add, Kris?
Well, you know, sure, gay guys can fuck their brains out and have orgies and hello grinder. I mean, but that's also a stereotype too. Why? Because it's based in reality. But I mean, I've got so many guy friends that are gay and long-term committed relationships who have so much heart connection and deep attachment with each other that there's something to me about attachment and sacredness and safety and sacredness. Like if there's attachment and safety, then the sacredness has a really fertile soil to take root in. And casual sex in the bathroom in Miami, like I don't see that happening there. That's a judgment on my part. Can casual sex be sacred? I don't know. Maybe it can.
Well, I've really enjoyed this beautiful conversation about a beautiful topic, in my opinion. And today, I normally use my gay and lesbian love is love deck, but today I'm gonna use my erotic deck, my erotic tarot deck, to bring us a reading, a tarot reading for everyone that's here, everyone that's watching, and everyone that's part of this. Is my very first tarot deck. So if anyone's interested in that, this is my very first tarot deck that I talked about in our tarot show. Manara is the name of the deck.
Okay.
And it's very erotic. And when I first picked it up, I was about 20 years old in a tarot class, and this woman, beautiful, butch, sexy woman, was giving out these free decks, and I was like, and I picked up this deck and I looked at it and I was like, wow, every single image had sexual experiences in it that I was like, oh, I know exactly what that means. It's indulgent. And I knew exactly what every picture I picked up, I knew what it meant. And she was like, oh, looks like you found your deck, honey. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I did, huh? And that was my first deck. I was about 20 years old and I was going to my first tarot class. And ever since then, I have read this deck. I don't always read it publicly because some people have a hard time getting past all the sexuality in the images. But since we're talking about sex this week anyway, this reading is for you, whether you're watching the show and recording, whether you're here live, whether you're in the show or not. No matter how you've participated, know that this reading is meant for you too. So
we've also got to see the crystal cock before we go.
Oh yeah, I have it.
Christine, just saying, don't hang up before that.
Here is the crystal cock.
That's 5,000 years old.
Yeah.
What?
So it originally, I thought it was about 500. During the Shogun era, they used to have penis inspectors that would wear these on their belt, so that's why the hole is in there. And they would go from town to town to town or village to village and check the penises to make sure there was no disease.
Oh
but
my God.
Then I found an auction that had one. So you can see down here, it's a little bit different. That had it at 5,000 years. So I had it dated.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it's a very, very, very powerful.
Candace, I think this thing is a foot long.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's got like balls like a tennis ball.
Yeah.
And it's clear.
It's clear crystal. It's clear crystal, or like kind of a yellow.
It's cloudy. It is cloudy, and it has some striations in it, and yeah. So there's my crystal cock.
Oh. I have a crystal one myself, but it's not meant for internal use, and so I definitely want to, mention there are some that are great for internal and some that are not. So you want to before you go sticking things inside.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's that card, Hollis? Thank you, Christine.
So the first card I got is this, which is actually about sacred connection. You can also see that in this image, this woman feels very much like the bride, and and he's a little bit of the totem. And that is meant to be like, this card is meant to remind us of the sacred connection and to remind us that relationships can sometimes feel like that. You can sometimes feel a little bit like someone's sacred totem. So if you need to hear that, you know who you are. And that's what this is all about. This is meant to remind you of the sacred connection in relationships and how we are held by one another. And the next card is actually this one, which is a beautiful card about celebrating feminine power. It is the stars. And so I want to say that this card here is about sacred feminine sexual energy. This is about bring that forward, because there are a lot of women out there that really could use the empowerment of sexuality. And I know that the guy part of me loves it when a woman is sacredly empowered. That is like the sexiest way a woman can present herself. And so I just want to remind you of your own sacred, sexy, feminine within you that is a star that shines bright. Bring that forward into the world. And as we go forward, be sure, this card always reminds me to honor where you came from, that even your ancestors had sex. I know you don't always like to think about your parents had sex, but they did, because you wouldn't be here if they didn't. And so did all of your other ancestors. Your ancestors have had sex, and they are cheering you on. Sex is a beautiful thing. And in the sacred connection, this is about sacred sex here. And in the sacred connection, it is a powerful connection to the past and the future, and to what we can heal from the past and what we can manifest in our future. And so these 3 cards are meant to remind each and every one of us of our connections and our beautiful connections with one another and partnerships, and our sacred feminine, whether we celebrate it or whether we like to help women harvest it, or if we bring it out within ourselves, however it comes out, however you need to celebrate it in your life, make sure you're celebrating the sacred feminine. And here we are in honoring our ancestors. So I hope you take that reading, take whatever you like and leave the rest. And in this time, I want to thank Kris and Christine and Candace. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for being part of the show. This show will be broadcasted on WLFE all the time, and also on our radio. It will be played there. So please share and like and comment. And I want to thank our beautiful audience for being here. Eve, thank you, Eve, for being part of this. And thank you, Tanith, who is actually, Tanith says, impressive crystal cog. Thank you, Tanith. And you can rewatch this show at any time on Facebook, YouTube, and of course, you can watch it at WLFEDB.com. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for watching Rainbow Soul, part of the WLFE DB Network, a queer perspective on spirituality beyond religion. We appreciate you sharing the show on your timeline. Follow us on social media of your choice and join our Facebook group, Rainbow Soul. We want to hear from you. Share your topic ideas for Hollis and LeKross. Explore upcoming shows and interesting guests. The Rainbow Soul Facebook group, where we build community of questioning seekers. Rainbow Soul, where spirituality is our medicine.
Tune in to Kaleidoscope Eyes with your host, trans man LeKross Ortiz. Every week, we will be touching topics within the LGBTQIA plus community. We will also be having interviews with individuals within the community and allies. Journey with us as we share in their struggles and triumphs every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, yeah. Life just got sweeter now that WLFE-DB has merchandise. Show your support by purchasing your t-shirts for WLFE, Paratalk Radio, Inside the Drag Closet, and more. But it doesn't stop there. T-shirts, coffee mugs, tanks, buttons, cloth bags, and more. Go to WLFE-DB.com. On the top bar, click on the merchandise tab and bam, there you go. You got merch. Support the shows. WLFE-DB.com.